Thank you. We haven't got there yet.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's Planning Committee meeting. My name is Councillor David Connor, and I'm chairman of the Planning Committee here at Fenland, and we'll be chairing today's meeting. Welcome also to those members of the press and the public who join us via the live stream. Before we begin, please can I take this opportunity to remind everyone to turn mobiles and computers to silent and ensure when using the microphones the red light is on and then turned off when you finish speaking. So now we'll go to agenda item number 1, and I'd like to ask member services if they've had any apologies for absence. Joe?
Thank you, Chairman. No apologies received today.
Thank you. Agenda item 2 is to confirm and sign the minutes from the meeting of the 16th of October 2024. Do I have a proposer to approve the minutes of the minutes of October the 16th, please? Right, thank you. Now we'll go to agenda item number 3, which is urgent items. There are none. Agenda item number 4 is declarations of interest. Member services will now go to each councillor in turn, and can you please state if you have anything to declare in relation to any agenda item this afternoon. Thanks. Over to you, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Benny.
Thank you, Joe. As always, member of Chatteris Town Council, but take no part in the planning discussions. I always leave the room whenever anything's done. 2 items on here today from Morton Hall. As always, I know Matthew, he's done work for me previously. I've worked with him through Chatteris Town Council with the Growing Fenland, so I know him. Item 5 today, the applicant, he is known to me when I was in business 8 years ago. He had a business premises that was 3 doors away from mine. If I see him in the street, I put my hand up to him, but other than that, I do not socialise with or in any way have any social involvements with him or business involvements, and I will approach this with an open mind on that one. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Connor.
None today, Joe. Thank you.
Councillor Mrs French.
Thank you. Member of March Town Council, but I take no part. Item agenda 8, I have been lobbied, but I have an open mind.
Thank you. Councillor Gershner.
Thank you. Woodley Town Council. I occasionally attend planning meetings at Woodley Town Council, but take no part in it, and I don't vote. And there's no items on the agenda today which I have an interest in. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mathedon.
Thank you, Joe. There are no items in the agenda I have an interest in. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Marks.
Thank you, Joe. I attend Chatteris Town Council, but take no part in their planning. And on item number 5, item number 6, Flaggrass Hill Road, the applicant is known to me via business, so I will be taking no part in the debate or vote.
Thank you very much. Councillor Seniclough.
Nothing to declare.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Joe. Now we'll go to the main part of the meeting. Members should only make a proposal on a planning application when invited to do so. However, I will initially be asking for anybody who's going to propose the officer's recommendation. Clearly, if no such proposal is forthcoming, or if that proposal fails, then I will be looking for an alternative proposal. Members are reminded that any such proposal should be accompanied by the planning reasons for doing so. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Tom Donnelly. He's the Senior Development Officer here at Fenland to present application F/YR24/0085/0, agenda item number 5. So when you're ready, Tom. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is an outline application for up to 5 dwellings with only access committed and a scheme of highway works proposed. Members may recognise the site as a resubmission of application 210833, which was for 6 dwellings and was previously refused by the committee on the basis that the development would result in an increase in unmitigated conflicts between vehicles and pedestrians and other users. So we can see here that the site is located to the southwest of Chatteris and is bounded by residential development to the north and undeveloped agricultural land to the south. and the extent of the access via Blackmill Road, as shown within the red line, is a designated byway. Here we have an indicative site plan, which shows that the proposal would likely take the form of a linear cul-de-sac located to the rear of the existing dwelling. The scheme of highway works proposed is intended to mitigate against the narrow nature of Blackmill Road at between 3 and 3.5 metres, and to provide a total of 2 passing places, one at the northernmost point of the red line and another adjacent to the access point of the site. And we have a larger scale indicative site plan just showing the potential layout that the development could take. And you can see there at the top right corner, one of the passing places in yellow there. And moving on to some photos of the application site. So the top left image there shows the existing dwelling situated to the north of the application site, and that's viewed from the point where the access abuts the access onto the application site. The top right image is taken from the access to the site looking north along Blackmill Road, which shows the narrowness of the road and the location of one of the proposed passing places to the right. The bottom left image is an internal view of the site looking southwest, showing its currently undeveloped and open nature. And the final image is looking south towards the access of the site, again highlighting the narrowness of the road. So to summarise, the application is an outline form for 5 dwellings with only access committed. And whilst the scheme of highway works in the form of 2 passing places is proposed, it has not been demonstrated that the scheme will be deliverable due to uncertainties over the legal width and ownership of the byway and adjacent land required to implement the scheme. As such, it's still considered that the proposal would result in an unacceptable conflict between motor vehicles and other users along Blackmill Road, causing an increase in the risk to safety. The proposal is therefore considered contrary to Policy LP15 of the Fenland Local Plan and paragraphs 108 and 110 of the MPPF. And additionally, the site is located within a mineral safeguarding area without any identifiable overriding need for the development. Therefore, the proposal is also contrary to Policy 5 of the Minerals and Waste Local Plan. It should be noted that the Mineral and Waste Local Plan was emerging at the time of the previous application, hence this being a new reason for refusal. And on this basis, the application is recommended for refusal. Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, thank you, Tom. We have 2 speakers on this application. I'd first like to invite Victor Joyce. He's an objector to the application to make his presentation to the committee. You've got 5 minutes, please. And obviously, your time will start when you take your time and, Thank you.
Thank you. Right, I'm here today to represent the residents of Blackmill Grove and Fairview Gardens objecting to this scheme. The revisions and extensions to this application, one was being a revised certificate C, which I believe is a type of ownership certificate when the applicant does not own all or any part of the drove. As stated previously in other applications, it is a byway. In previous applications, the applicant has tried to claim ownership and failed. Recently, the applicant has employed local contractors to do unauthorised work on the drove and also to the drainage ditch to the left bordering the properties on Millfield. Highways enforcement stopped him from removing any more trees and hedgerows from this ditch. He was subsequently fined £4,400. His latest attempt has resulted in the drainage ditch bordering Millfield to partially collapse and blocking the outfall drainage pipe that was installed by Highways to alleviate the flooding issues. It was suggested that the reason for the certificate C was to enable the applicant to fill in the ditch and try to widen the width of the drove to enable 2-car passing. The traffic that this development will incur is now increased to 20 plus cars, which has gone up from the previous application. Also, two objections are from properties at the end of Millfield that face directly towards this new proposed development. The illegal removal of the trees and hedgerows has already reduced the privacy to their properties, and they fear that they will lose even more if this development goes ahead. Also, the drove is 2 to 3 feet higher than the bordering properties, to the left of the drove being Millfield and to the right hand side being Fairview Gardens. The residents feel that any attempt to fill in these ditches or widening of the drove could have the potential to cause more flooding issues. As stated, the drove is a byway with one car width of approximately 3.2 metres at its widest point. It is used by many pedestrians, families, joggers, dog walkers and horse riders. And at the end of the drove, or the byway, is the council-owned Pocket Park, which is well used by all of the above and has increased footfall along this drove. As stated, the width of this drove is a restricted width, has no footpaths or street lighting, so increased traffic flow could make a lot less safer place for pedestrians or the other users. So the conclusion to this is we as residents have to keep objecting to each application. This has been going on since 2016. We have all opposed it, have other authorities each time being refusing for this development. The main objectors since 2016 have been local residents, obviously, highways and byways, the county access and bridleways, British Horse Society, Anglian Water, because their sewer main runs the length of that drove, and also the local town council, which I have to state now, I am a member of the Charters Town Council, but here today as a resident. That's it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that, Mr. Joyce. Members, questions, clarifications to Mr. Joyce, please. Councillor Marks.
Thank you, Mr. Joyce. Touching on the flooding, I take it your property backs on or is along that road there.
It has done, yes.
Has it actually flooded there before?
Yes, it has.
And looking at when I did the site visit, the dike is absolutely full.
Can I just intervene there? Sorry, Councillor Marks. Councillor Marks and obviously every member, can we just, when we finish speaking, I know it's a bit difficult, but can we just make sure the lights are off? It's on when you're speaking, obviously, off when you're toing and froing. I know it's really, really difficult, okay. But unfortunately, the YouTube doesn't pick that up, and I know I'm one of the main protagonists on that. So I'm trying to learn, and hopefully everybody will do the same. So who's going to speak first now? Okay, Councillor Mark, put your leg up, please. Thank you.
You want to switch yours off? Thank you. So, I mean, I had a look at that dike. It is absolutely overgrown, and it's not just recently happened. That has been over a number of years. And looking to the left-hand side and looking at it, also it looks to be that the boundaries seem to be fairly flexible as they've moved. There's been some new posts put in there. There's fences that have been dog-legged along there as well. Do you not think that actually, you know, if that was made wider and piped, it would actually alleviate the problem?
No, so the property you're on about with the posts is my property. We have lived there or owned that property for 50 years. We have maintained the flow of that ditch all of that time, as have other properties. That's a free-flowing drain still. It does take water. It's not blocked. It has been piped further down that lane. About 10, maybe more years ago, we had a load of flooding problems. One of the storm drains overflowed, which flooded our gardens to the right, Fairview Gardens. Highways came and diverted that pipe from the right-hand ditch to the left-hand ditch because that is the main flow drain. So that's why our side doesn't get as much water as obviously the Millfield side. But the fact is that the drove to the gardens is higher. So even if those ditches were filled in and you can't level because they slope. So one of the reasons I haven't piped my ditch in the 50 years I've lived there is for that reason. Because if I pipe my ditch and fill it, it's still on a slope to my garden. So where's water going to go? It always goes downhill, it doesn't go uphill. And also, to the left-hand side is the main storm drain now from the top of Blackmill to the bottom, which goes out into the storm drains.
Thank you.
Okay. So who owns the drains then? You're on the left-hand side, which is all blocked up. Are they riparian drains? So who owns them? So yeah, so riparian drain is one owner or two owners. So do you know who the owners are of that riparian drain?
No, the reason that I've come here about this certificate C is the point to claim ownership of that ditch. Now, over the years, the residents have always cleaned those ditches, and so have highways. It's their ditch to clean. Although, when my garden flooded, and I spoke to highways, they diverted the pipe from the right-hand ditch to the left-hand ditch, the main flow to Mill. So they told me then that it was my responsibility to maintain the flow in my ditch, which we all have done over the years, all of the houses that have bordered this property.
So we just heard from Councillor Marks when he went down there that it was all blocked up, all overgrown. So I always find when something's overgrown, it doesn't act in full capacity of that, obviously. So just a question to you, really. Would that not be better if that drain was cleaned out, piped, and done something with, so you wouldn't, so that would alleviate the problem for ever and ever, in your opinion?
Well, in my opinion, it's been like that for 60, 70, 80 years. Before those developments were there, that drove has always been, that byway's always been there. And it's always flowed. No real problems. The only problem we had was when the main storm drain blocked. So that's why highways came and diverted the pipe into the left-hand drain to make it flow properly, which it always does. The fact that it hasn't been cleaned is not down to the residents or the applicant. It's the fact that highways have said, well, you know, it's a repairing drain, you have to maintain part of that ditch.
Surely, if you all agreed that it is a riparian ditch, we've come to that conclusion, haven't we? If you all clean that out once and for all, and all paid X amount of money, then had it piped, that'd be the problem solved forevermore, wouldn't it? You'd still flow. It certainly flows certainly a lot better because you wouldn't have any obstruction of the trees, surely.
I'll ask you a question. What would be the benefit of filling the ditch in? It doesn't flood. It's never flooded in the last 20 years. If that ditch is filled in, which to be quite honest, the applicant is asking for, he will then claim part ownership of that ditch. And then if it's piped, the next thing will be filling in the ditch. The next application that will come before you again will be to improve the byway to have access for two-car passing, which these applications come in since 2016 on the same basis. It's not the fact that the residents have any problem or issue with Mr. Salisbury, the applicant. It's not a problem. But it's just the fact that every so often, I mean, we've had ditches and hedgerows sprayed off with chemicals. We've had contractors coming in cutting trees down. I mean, £4,400 should tell you something, but it's you know, the Highways Authority fined him of that. About 2 or 3 weeks ago, had somebody come there and ditched the blockage you said was filling, ditched it out. But the reason they ditched that out, and I had a load of abuse from the contractor who was doing that, was the fact that he had been told to level off the top of the brink where there was a ridge, which was a dike brink. He levelled it off completely, took it out, dug out the ditch. So now that ditch is now subsided because there's no actual physical bank on the top of that bridge. So the next application that will come in will be, well, we'll fill the ditch in and pipe it, and then I'll widen it, and it's just an ongoing thing, I'm afraid.
Okay, well, thank you for answering, clarifying that question. Thank you very much for that. Councillor Benny, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Joyce, there's a lot of speculation in what you say today, and we have to deal with facts in here. I mean, I know where your property is. I've been down that road many times, as people will probably hear later on today. I mean, you've put some posts on land that doesn't belong to you. You don't own, nobody can own both sides of a drain. And you put posts on somebody else's property. And I must feel that some of this is, maybe some of it's about your drainage, you feel it is, but I feel that there is maybe a bit of personality coming into this. And I think the fact that you put posts to narrow the width of that drove, and there's a fence that wasn't there as well, I think there's something certainly a little bit untoward there. They are your posts, are they? Yeah. Yeah. Is that your land?
Part of that ditch is, yes.
Is it on the side that you put the posts?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Just, sorry about that. Can we just make sure these lights are on and off? Sorry to be a nuisance, but as I said, we can't, you two can't hear it. Carry on.
Yeah. So one of the reasons that I installed those, or two reasons actually. One, I've maintained that ditch and the brink leading to the side of that ditch. I've maintained that for the last 40 years since I've lived there. I occasionally, when I cut that grass that I've maintained, I have cleaned dog mess up, because not everybody cleans up after themselves, do they? So that's one reason. Number two was those fence posts that I put in with little chain links alleviates part of that problem where I don't have to go and clear up after people's dogs. And also, it's partly due, I will agree with Mr. Benny, that it's to stop cars driving onto that grass, because the width at the top of that grass where I've put my fence posts inside that boundary slopes. So if a car comes up the drove and drives off of that drove, it's likely to go into the ditch because the ditch slopes. There's no animosity with Mr. Salisbury whatsoever. I have no problem with him. The only problem I have is the fact that he's doing stuff illegally to try to get this application through. And each time it comes before planning, it comes up with different applications or revisions or extensions. And I feel as a resident, not as a councillor, because that's irrelevant, because this is 2016, and as Mr. Benny will tell you, I've only been on the local council for 6 months, 8 months, so this is well before. And I've opposed it every time, as have a lot of the other residents. But it just appears that every time the application comes in, there's another revision, or it's changed from one house buildings, 6 houses, then it's reduced to 5 houses, then he wants passing places. And I mean, it is a byway. It is a byway at the end of the day. And also, I'll answer Councillor Benny's. Those posts have only been erected recently. Further round that side of the drove, over the last 30, 40 years, people have filled in part of that ditch to the right and planted hedgerows or trees or fences or whatever. It's not just me being silly now. I'm the last one to do any work down that drove. So it's not like I'm doing it. That ditch has been open from where my property is for the last 50, 60 years, ever since those houses were built. And my wife's lived there 50 years. And we've always maintained, whoever she's with, maintained that ditch and the drove to a point.
Councillor Benny, I'm sure you'd like to come back on that.
No,
Or would you not?
We'll be here all day, Mr. Chairman.
More questions to Mr. Joyce at all, members? No? Thank you very much for answering some clarifications on those questions. Okay. So, now I'd like to invite Matthew Hall. Of course, he's the agent to make his presentation to the committee. Obviously, you know what to do. You've got 5 minutes also, Mr. Hall. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. We're pleased to note in the officer's report that the principle of residential development at this site is accepted and there's no reason for refusal, and all this site is in flood zone 1. At present, the Fenland District Council bin lorry uses this access to collect bins from the properties down this access, some of which have been here probably for about 50 years, and large agricultural vehicles use this access road and have done so for a considerable number of years. The map on the screen that we submitted, since the first application, 2021, there's been 2 delegated approvals in yellow and purple, both for bungalows. They've been approved with no objections from highways under delegated approval. And you can see to the right-hand side here to the east, there's a 50-house development that's also been approved, 2019. When we submitted this application, we submitted land registry documents. Some of those go back to the 70s, Fairview Gardens, when Fairview Gardens was being constructed. And we submitted those straight away, so officers have seen those. And on those land registry maps submitted, it consistently shows the width between rear boundaries of properties of Fairview Gardens and Millfield Close of between 7 and 8 metres. There's a continuous curve, there's no kick-outs, except it's a continuous curve. And when we've been to site and measured between some of the fences, which is also consistent with the Ordnance Survey plan that we submitted, there's 7 to 8 metres. We've got maps going back to 1886 and a further map, 1950, that shows this access as Black Mill Drove as a consistent width. Now, as the previous speaker said, when you go down there on the right-hand side towards the bend, there's a kick in the fence line. It's not consistent. It does not match these land registry red lines of people's private ownership. It doesn't match that. And we submitted that right at the start, similar to what the previous speaker said. And I think one of the photos that the officer brought up at the start, the one in the bottom right-hand corner, where it shows where the drove is narrow, that doesn't match the land registry. There's quite a bit of difference where those fences are compared to where the red line is on land registry documents, and some of them go back to the 70s. Under item 5.6 of this report, it's the highway state. There is a modest increase in peak hour vehicle trips arising from this development, which would not result in detrimental impact on safety grounds, and such that an objection could not be sustained solely on the grounds of highway safety. That's what Cambridgeshire County Council has said. And one key point is on the 12th of March, Cambridgeshire County Council Highways came back and raised no objection to this application based on 5 dwellings and 2 passing bays. But when you look further on the public access and in this report, on the 4th of November, they've now come back and objecting to the application, even though they said there's no detrimental impact on safety grounds, and it's still for up to 5 houses and still 2 passing places proposed, 1 on each side. And the 2 previous applications that were approved under delegated powers, there were no highways concerns there. This site and also the land to the south of this site and also to the west is all in the emerging local plan for residential development. The 2 plots already approved off this access did not have concern raised with regards to sand and gravel extraction. The 50-house development that we have got to the east, that did not have any concerns raised with regards to sand and gravel extraction. Policy LP15 stated in this report as a reason for refusal, LP15 is to create a more sustainable transport network in Fenland. This application, in our opinion, provides betterment to the existing situation with passing places which would be used by vehicles and pedestrians who use the actual drove now. So it's betterment. We're not making the situation worse. The site is all in flood zone 1 and there have been previous approvals given since the previous refusal. 2 delegated approvals, so there's material change since that previous refusal. The site abuts a 50-house development, which is being built out, and there are no objections in the officer's report with regards to the principle of residential development. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Hall. Members, questions, clarifications to Mr. Hall, please. We'll take Councillor Marks first, then Councillor Senniclough. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. A question. Byway. We hear highway, byway. I believe this is a byway. Do you actually have a calculation as to how wide a byway should be? I will be asking officers the same question.
The honest answer is, when we've looked at byways down Mill Hill Lane in March, where we've done applications, Westfields, Old Dairy Yard off Westfields Road in Maney, and this one, they all seem to vary. When I spoke to the byways lady probably 2 odd months ago about this, there is no defined width for a byway. They don't all have to be X amount of width wherever they're located. So no, I don't, sorry, no.
Thank you.
Councillor Senniclough, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Hello, Matthew. I looked at the previous application from 2021. This application has gone down in the number of properties from 6 to 5. Is there a reason for that?
We just felt, I mean, it's up to 5. We just felt if we reduce the number of dwellings, it reduces the number of highway trips, as it were, cars going in, cars going out. And we felt that would help with regards to when it's consulted with highways and less vehicles. That's the only reason.
So you do feel that there is an issue with the byway or highway going in based on your decision to reduce the number of properties down there?
No, we looked at the previous application in 2021, which showed no improvements at all to the byway. So we felt it had been refused by members and officers. We needed to make a material change, which was to do some improvements. We've gone out there and surveyed, done some research on land registry, and we felt we needed to do some improvements to the byway. And the one thing I would say is, where we've shown these improvements incorporated in the byway and a passing place, we've labelled it on our drawing, it'd be 5.5 metres, which includes the existing byway. But when you go down there and measure and look on land registry, in places it's 7 or 8 metres. So we're not going the whole width of this area, I'll call it. We're still leaving area inside. There's still quite 1.5 metres, some places 2 metres, maybe more. So I felt, to overcome the previous reason, we needed to show some improvements to the byway, yes, and reduce potential traffic, yes.
Through you, Chair. You mentioned agricultural vehicles use the access road. I appreciate that some combine harvesters are pretty wide. How do you feel that you can mitigate that if it is used regularly, as you said in your presentation?
The one thing I would say is, at the moment, I think the farmers who own some of the land at the back or rent it or farm it, maybe PJ Lee's. My understanding is they go down there now. So by making these improvements, in my opinion, it's betterment. If they meet a car, a motorbike or whatever, there's some passing places, which is far better than what it is now. So my understanding is the agricultural vehicles use it now. So we won't be introducing any more agricultural vehicles, yes.
Thank you, Matthew.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions for Mr. Hall? Can't see a burning desire to. Oh, yes, we have. Councillor Benny, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Matthew, when this application came in previously, before the posts and the fence was put up, I went down and measured that before we came to Planning Committee in 2001, and at its narrowest point, that roadway was 7 metres wide. And since then, these posts and the fence, and it's encroached. It has become narrower down there. I mean, have you got any? You mentioned the land registry, and you said that the land registry doesn't match to the drove. Would the land registry for Fairview Gardens, where would you say the boundary was? Which side of the dike? Is it a shared dike? Could you give any details on that, please?
Thank you. So one, on the land registry documents going back to 71, we submitted them all online, 72, and some real up-to-date ones, particularly number 13, Fairview Gardens. The ditches aren't shown. The ditches aren't shown on there. Riparian ditches, which are maintained by highways, not maintained by highways, etc. We don't know. The boundary line is quite clear, and this is the one. The boundary line is consistently it should be a lot wider on the right-hand side when you go down. The fences on 2 or 3 of the properties kick in quite a lot, and you can see it on site, and it was on the photo that was up there that the officer put up in the bottom right-hand corner, where it narrows up, taking a guess, about 1.5 meters. That does not match people's land registry red lines. So are the fences in those 2 or 3 properties in the right place? I'd have to question that, to say the least.
Thank you. Okay, any more questions at all? No, thank you very much. So we come to questions for officers, members. Councillor Marks, then I'll come in. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. They know this one's coming because I've already said so. Can you define what a byway and a width is, please?
Yeah, thank you through you, Chair. So I'm just looking at the definitive maps teams. Obviously, they're the experts in defining byways, extents, etc., and locations. Their comments at 5.4.3. There's no legally defined and recorded width for this byway, and we are not able to advise what it would be. As a dimension not known, we cannot guarantee that the applicant will be able to improve and widen the byway to secure a standard that may be required by the LPA. So that's basically as far as we can go as officers, because we're obviously advised by the definitive mapping team, who are deemed to be the experts in sort of assessing. Thank you.
Thank you. So just to confirm, there is no laid down measurement. So it could be 1 metre, it could be 10 metres. We're working on an unknown.
Yes, that's right.
Thank you.
Right, so thank you, Councillor Marks. I'll just come in. Can we just have the picture on the left-hand side where brought up where the fence? There's been possibly some land grab putting up the fences, where the fences are coming out as. Can we have that one? Can you just point it out where it's been intimated that somebody's put up the fence in the wrong place to narrow the byway up?
There are the photos we have on the screen, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Sorry, Councillor Marks.
Thank you. Also, could you confirm, do we know what minerals are needing safeguarding under the ground there, please?
Yeah, so I think it would be sort of gravel, general sort of minerals for gravel, which obviously used for construction, etc.
Okay, and it also says waste local plan. Can you confirm what that is? That the thought that it would then be used as a waste site thereafter?
No, so Cambridgeshire and Peterborough have got a joint local plan which forms part of our development plan. Cambridgeshire and Peterborough are the Waste and Minerals Authority, so separate, so they deal with minerals. They also deal with waste as well separately. So you'll see we have, in other applications coming forward, we have consideration of their waste guidance, so in terms of bin collections and things like that. You probably heard the term recap, but that sits separate to the minerals and sort of safeguarding. So they have two functions in that regard.
Okay, so just to confirm, it's basically sand and gravel, it's not gold or anything like that we're dealing with.
I'm not aware of gold, and I'm sure if Mr Salisbury was, this may be a different application.
Thank you, we have quite a bit of sand and gravel.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Councillor French, your turn, thank you.
Thank you. Can officers confirm what Mr Joyce stated about Anglia Water objecting. My understanding is Anglia Water don't normally, and I can't see it anywhere in the report. Can I have a clarification, please?
We'll have a look at the report, Councillor.
No, I don't think there's reference to Anglian Water in the report. We've certainly not consulted with them because they fall under, or this scheme would fall under the sort of consultation with them, which is normally for major applications. So not aware of any comments from Anglian Water on this particular application.
No, there certainly isn't. Councillor French, carry on, thanks.
Thank you for that. I wanted a clarification what Mr. Joyce stated, because it isn't in the report. I have had several meetings with Anglia Water, and they don't normally comment on these things.
Right, any more questions to officers? Councillor Gerstner, thank you.
Thank you. Can the officers please confirm, or our legal officer, the right of way to accessing a byway, please?
Who deals with it?
Thank you, Chairman, through you. A byway is a highway. It's a public highway. And members of the public are allowed to pass and repass on foot, horseback and motorised vehicles.
Okay, any more questions? Oh, Councillor Marks, thank you.
Can I just sort of come in and ask then, who then has the obligation to upkeep that as a highway? Is that Cambs County Council?
The Highway Authority has general obligations to maintain highways. That's the general rule. But it's not adopted, as I understand it, this land, so it won't be as maintained as an adopted highway would be. The owner may have an obligation, but I don't think we know who the owner is. It might be the county council, it might be some other party.
So, Matt, would you?
What was it?
Okay, just hang on for some clarification there, thanks. Moving on then, so can anybody throw any more light on this then? You guys, whoever you. Stephen?
Well, Matt's just confirmed to me that if the land is in unknown ownership, by land I mean the byway itself, the applicant should have served certificate D to confirm the land is in unknown ownership. It should have been advertised as such. I understand from Matthew that actually wasn't done. So there may be a technical issue why this application may not be determined.
Okay, so what I'm going to take a step. Yes, I'm going to bring Mr. Hall back just for. Would you like to come and just? It's not a thing I usually do, but this does need clarifying because it's obviously great importance.
Thank you. During the application, we serve various notices, but then we put an ad in the newspaper, and I have an email. It take me a while to search on my phone from Mr. Rowan. I agreed the advert with Mr. Rowan, and that was put in the newspaper. And there's an email exchange between me and Mr. Rowan. I think the officer, Mr. Fitzjohn, was copied in, so I did agree that notice with Mr. Rowan. It'd take me a while to search on it, but I have got that. That's all I would.
Okay.
And we also did serve a notice on the byways people as well. Yes.
So it looks to me as though you've done as much as you can. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Perhaps just for clarification's sake, when you get back, you can perhaps find that email as you're sitting comfortably in your seat, just for some clarification at a later time. Thanks. So we're still in questions for officers. Anybody got any more? Councillor French?
Yeah, going back to the public right way and to answer the question, quite often county council do not own this land, somebody else owns it. And it's very, very seldom that county council will actually repair it. And that's, I've had quite a lot of dealings with public rights of way and byways, so I think that's a clarification we need. And I think Mr. forget his name now, he did state he had documents going back 18 something that they actually did own the land. So is it, yeah, sorry, yeah. Mr. Hall. Yeah, which I'm confused on this because Mr. Joyce says he owns it, but then somebody else says they don't know who owns it. So this is a bit confusing. Who actually owns it?
So for clarification, I'm going to bring in Stephen again. Thank you.
Yeah, it may be that Mr. Joyce believes he's a riparian owner because there is a legal presumption if land is a roadway or a river is in unknown ownership, then it's deemed to be the owners of either side own halfway across. So it may well be that Mr. Joyce believes he's a riparian owner by virtue of that legal presumption.
If I may come back, I live next door to riparian dikes, so I know quite a bit about riparian dikes. Mr. Joyce might own to the middle of the dike. He doesn't own the whole dike. So we have to try to establish who actually owns the road, because you've got dikes on both sides and you've got a roadway there. So Mr. Joyce does not own part of the road. He only owns to half of the dike.
That's my understanding of it all, and I've done riparian ownership quite a while now, but that is my take on it. But I'll bring in Councillor Benny. He's got something to add, I'm sure.
Yeah, thank you. That is my understanding, and that's what I was trying to establish with Mr. Joyce. He's put these stakes on the wrong side of his boundary. It's a vicarian drain to the centre of the drain, and he's put them on the roadway side, which is narrowing the width down. And I can't see, from my understanding, as with Councillor French and yourself, Councillor Connor, that you don't own both sides of a drain on a vicarian drain. So those posts have been put there on somebody else's property, whoever that may be, and they only appeared a few months ago. I just feel this has narrowed this roadway down to make it look bad, and I truly that's not something we very often see here at this committee.
Well, that needs to be addressed, or not, as the case may be, further along down the line, but they are there at the moment, and we just have to go on what we've got, but certainly that needs looking into, in my opinion. So, any more questions to officers at all? Because we are still in office.
Let's come back on a point on that.
I'm just going to bring in Matt again. Thanks.
Thank you, Chairman. Obviously, I feel obviously this application's had a good debate, but I just think when but I'll just want to bring it back to the application that is before us. Obviously, this application has been at committee before, and members found it unacceptable on highway grounds. Obviously, that is a material consideration. That's why the officer's report explains, objections weren't raised to the principle, because at the time officers did, when the committee looked at the application, they found the principle okay, but accepted there were concerns about highway. That, whether fences have moved or not moved since that application is certainly irrelevant. It's actually an assessment of part of this application. It's not really relevant to the actual reason for refusal or the decisions we had previously. And I just want to make sure that members are keeping their eye on the actual issues around this application, where the reason for refusal in relation to highways is, one of the better term, is that while there may well be potential to make the access way acceptable compared to previously, which was in fact, officers are not have got concerns about the ability to deliver those passing bays because of ownership issues. And I think actually the discussion we're just having is only evidence and backs up that point, that there are significant concerns about ownership, and we have to decide as the decision makers, is it safe, is it possible to impose a condition that requires these passing bays to be implemented on this road in a roadway where there are significant concerns about who has ownership. And that's really what the reason for refusal one summed up is. And I just think I feel like we may be going a little bit of the way into who does or doesn't own it. And what the main point is, we don't know who owns it. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, I think that was made clear earlier. I think we've been down that road, Matt. Thank you for clarifying that. But I think we all recollect that. Councillor Marks.
Sorry, can I just come back on a point, Matt? Just to clarify then, that with the two passing places, there has been a material change to the highways. Obviously, it was refused last time on highways, but with a part and parcel was because of the highways concern. By doing the two passing places, that then alleviates the concern of vehicles passing down there. It is purely then just an ownership issue, maybe an ownership issue.
Yeah, so through you, Chair, so the local highway authority have essentially confirmed that the scheme with the passing bays is acceptable. It's subject to delivery of those passing bays. So their objection is on the basis that we don't know how those passing bays are going to be secured because we don't know the legal status of the extent of highway or land required to deliver those passing bays. But their acceptance of the scheme in highway terms is predicated on delivery of that mitigation. And that's what's different. So the application we had before, in answer to your question, there was nothing proposed at that time, nothing tabled, other than an agreement or acceptance from the applicant at that time that they would explore and deliver necessary mitigation, footways, etc. And obviously that application was refused on failure to evidence that they were deliverable. It would be unreasonable to secure that through a condition. And officers consider we're in a very similar situation with this application. Whilst we may have a plan with drawings on that show what could be delivered, it's the deliverability that's in question.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Any more questions to officers then? Before we move into debate? Can see no burning desire to at all. So we'll call for debate now then. Who wants to kick off the debate, please? Councillor Mifflin, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Just back to policy LP15, we're talking about this passing places and the fact that it hasn't, the ownership of the land has not been determined yet. Just like we had posts and fences and dikes being filled in without authorization, why wasn't that picked up when the application was made, and why has no enforcement been made on those unauthorized encroachment on the public highway? And also, can we not make it a condition to say, if we decide to say pass this application, that the passing places be effectively delivered before, if we do decide to go ahead with this application?
What you're saying, I think, you're saying you feel that we could condition these parking spaces, these parking. Yeah.
Yes, Chair. That's what I'm trying to say. Yes.
And what you're saying really basically is, if we can't deliver it, it won't get built.
Correct.
These 5 houses will not be delivered. But if we can get the extra land or negotiate with someone else to get these parking places built, that's what you're saying, aren't you?
That's right.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Marks.
Thank you, Chair. Personally, I've been down there, I've had a look. I find the mineral thing a total blind. I think that, I have to say, there's an awful lot of sand and gravel around Meeple and all the rest of the areas. I think we will run out of building land long before we start digging that up to take any minerals out of there. There's 50 houses next door to it. If we were that upset about it, we surely should have stopped the 50 houses beside it, because that obviously had value for minerals and everything else as well. The applicant has come back. It isn't clear regarding, the roadway ownership, but he has come back with a scheme. Whether it works or whether it doesn't, that's got to be negotiation with other people. He's got to go and obviously talk to the neighbours or whatever, or whoever owns the property. So if we can condition it that unless, everybody's in agreement, I personally, I'm happy to back this.
Yeah, I'm of the same mind as Councillor Marks, really. It is an improved scheme, most definitely from the one we had some 3 years back. And I'm very similar, as I said, to opinion of Councillor Marks. I feel there is some way forward to this. Quite what it is at the moment, I've no idea, and I'm quite happy to listen to anybody else who's going to add to this. But at the moment, yeah. Councillor Clough, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor French. Obviously, this is an outline planning application, and we have to look at it as it's presented to us. My concern is that if we say, well, we'll condition this and we'll condition that, where does that end ad infinitum? In terms of the deliverability of this application that we've got in front of us, at the moment, there hasn't been enough done to mitigate the safety in terms of access and in terms of delivering it safely. So my concern is about applying conditions that just realistically can't be delivered.
Okay, Councillor Marks, then Councillor Gerstner. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. One thing I would say, and the agent said regarding betterment, the road is quite wide already down there. By putting 2 passing places in, I think that will certainly better that roadway. If we're worried about safety of people using it on foot, by putting those 2 passing places in, and equally, as we've already heard, as Councillor Clough asked, regarding agricultural vehicles going down there as well. Agricultural vehicles aren't small, especially combines. You know, they are a large vehicle, but they obviously do go up and down there already. So by putting the passing places in, surely we are bettering it. And equally, further down that road, there are 2 building plots, which have now been given permission. That didn't seem to be a problem to give those permission. So what we're actually looking at is 5 more houses on a road that's not exactly the M25 by any means. So, you know, for me, I think, you know, it is betterment.
Okay, Councillor Gerstner.
Thank you. We've been told in the past about land ownership not being a materialistic part of planning. We seem to have spent a long time discussing this byway. The officers have made it quite clear, both on the 2021 application and the one in front of us today, about the fact that there's a public byway open to all traffic, and until such time that the applicant can prove that the land is deliverable, I don't think we should support it.
Pertinent point, Councillor Gerstner. Councillor Benny, your turn, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chairman. When this application came before the committee before, I actually proposed we turn this down because access was not committed at that time, and that was why we were advised that we had to turn it down, because access was not committed. On this application, there's 2 things. One, we've got a good scheme in front of us that can deliver, and we've been told many times in planning that if you can't prove ownership, then it just won't get built. But also, between the previous application on this site and this site, we've had 2 other applications that are served from the same drove, further down the drove, one in 2022, and the other one in 23. And when you look at those reports, there was no mention whatsoever of additional traffic, and they were approved with officer delegation. There was no coming to committee, there was no mention of this byway, and I look at this, and the thing that changes it to me is the fact we've had 2 other building plots, one that's been built out, and the other one is a plot fenced off, ready to go, and they've been approved since then. If it was good enough for them, why is this not good enough for this one? And I look at this, the parking places that are shown on there will improve it, will improve public safety, and there will be public betterment by approving this. And if the land ownership cannot be resolved, then they won't be built anyway.
Yeah, I think you've summed it up in a nutshell, Councillor Benny, really. That's where I'm coming from, but we're still in debate. Anybody wants to add to it? No? Are we all finished? No? Okay, finished the debate. Officers, would you like to come in?
Yes, thank you, Chair. If I can just come back on a few parts. Obviously, there are two issues with this byway. One is not just land ownership, it's also the legal extent of the byway, which hasn't been explored, confirmed, or an order made. So there are actually two issues in terms of actually establishing what isn't deliverable here, and actually how that byway should and can accommodate the additional traffic. In terms of the two applications for single dwellings that have been approved, both reports do refer to both the refused application and the fact that this is a byway, and that obviously there will be additional traffic impacts on there. However, it was considered in both applications because there were incrementally single dwellings and infill at that time, that they wouldn't cumulatively create a significant harm in terms of highway conflict. We now have an application in front of us where the local highway authority are clearly objecting on the basis that the increase, which would ultimately total 7 dwellings here now, would create a material impact on the highway which would be unsafe for users. In terms of betterment, whilst I take your point, I think introducing passing bays here would only serve to improve that byway and access for all. It goes back to the point, though, that if you're going to give that significant weight, you need to be certain that that is deliverable. In terms of securing it through a condition, we must make sure that we meet the tests of planning conditions. One is that they are reasonable. Reasonable could also include that they are reasonably achievable and deliverable. If they are not, and we impose a condition that doesn't meet those tests, the applicant could seek to remove that condition, and we may be in a weak position to actually object to that basis. So we could ultimately end up with an outline application which requires improvements to highways. If they come back and say, actually, we can't do it, and it's an unreasonable condition, we may be forced to remove that condition, which means that no improvements would occur. So members need to be mindful of the weight that they're affording to betterment on that basis. In terms of minerals and waste, as I mentioned earlier, the local plan for minerals and waste was updated post-refusal of the application for 6 dwellings. There is a condition in there. That condition forms part of our development plan. We have a legal duty to assess applications and determine in accordance with our development plan, and that policy on the minerals and waste says that we should not be supportive of applications on mineral safeguarding areas where it's not demonstrated they meet a need. In respect of the scheme for 50 dwellings, it's considered that that would meet a need in terms of a wider need of housing delivery. This is only serving 5 market dwellings, which is unlikely to meet current needs, notwithstanding that we have a healthy land supply. In terms of, as I say, in terms of sort of encroachment onto public highways, Councillor Miffordin raised a point that no enforcement had taken place. Obviously, enforcement acts in the public interests. If there are no concerns raised to us about unauthorised works, then it's not really reasonable for us to take action on that basis. Notwithstanding that the highway authority would also be entitled to take action where they felt it met or affected their highway. Thank you.
Thank you, Gavin. Councillor Benny, thanks.
Yeah, if you don't mind if I come back. I mean, I've got the Cambridgeshire County Council report here, and it says, to reiterate, whilst there is no submitted forecast of vehicle movements from the proposed dwelling, and it is clearly accepted that the byway is currently utilised by a number of pedestrians throughout the day, the modest increase in peak hours vehicle trips arising from the development would not result in detrimental impact on safety grounds, such that an objection from the highway authority could not be substantiated solely on the grounds of highway safety. So that to me says that there is no objection on highways grounds for safety. It's about the delivery of the scheme rather than the safety aspect. So there is no safety problem with passing this one.
Okay, Gavin, you'd like to come back on that because we're questions to officers. Thank you,
Chair. I think if you carry on reading those comments, it follows. It should be clearly understood, however, that the acceptance of the proposed development on highway grounds is contingent upon the provision of the widening works.
So, any more, Councillor Marks? I've got.
Thank you. Just picking up on something, Gavin, you said it may be I misunderstood. You said we when regarding the enforcement. Do you mean CCC or do you mean Fenland?
Well, any enforcement an enforcement party. So if we felt that that was unauthorised works, then the local planning authority could take action if they felt it expedient to do so. Equally, if the local highway authority felt it expedient to take action, then they could do so also.
Yeah. So that, just to clarify, that's the moving of the boundary fence over the dike.
I think that's what was the suggestion was, yes.
Right, thank you.
Right, any more questions to officers at all? Okay. So we go in for a proposer. Do I have a proposer to go with officer recommendation to refuse planning permission for this application? Councillor Gerstner, have you got a seconder for your Councillor Senate Clough? So we've got a proposal to go with officer recommendation to refuse this application, proposed by Councillor Gerstner, seconded by Councillor Senate Clough. Can I have a show of hands on that proposal, please?
2 votes, Chairman.
Those against?
That's 5 votes, Chairman.
Okay, so that obviously fails. So can I have another proposal, please? Councillor Benny?
Thank you, Chairman. As I proposed, I want to turn it down last time. I'll do the deeds for passing it or approving it this time. I'd like to go against officer's recommendation and approve this application. Looking at LP 15, it is about connectivity of sustainable transport network, which is the reasons that are given within the report for turning this down. Anyone who's going to live in these houses is going to have a car. Now, you can live in Chatteris, but you can't have a life if you don't have a car in Chatteris. Our public transport is abysmal, and what are we connecting it to? If the people who live in this house want to use public transport, I'm fairly confident they could walk up that drive, as the dog walkers do many times a day. So in terms of reasons why, which is LP 15 and MPF reason 108 and 110 is also about connectivity to public services, which is the reason for turning this down. And I feel that that explanation covers all 3 of those reasons for that. I also feel that although I turned the previous application down, on this occasion, we have had 2 other dwellings that use this drive over a longer period, longer distance than these will. And therefore, because they have been approved, that's changed the game to me by allowing that. And also we've got a material change on the number of houses, and we've also got a material change on the access.
So I'm happy with that. So to go along with that, so I'm looking for a seconder on Councillor Benny's. Councillor Mifferton, thank you very much. So we've got another proposal on the table here to go against officer recommendation to approve this application. It's proposed by Councillor Benny, seconded by Councillor Mifferton. Can I have a show of hands on? Conditions. Yeah, conditions as well.
I would like to look at the conditions before the decision notice is issued on this.
Yeah.
And if I get a seconder, I would be appreciative of yourself as chair and whoever seconds, Councillor Flynn, had a look at these conditions before. We don't want onerous conditions.
I'm happy to do so. I'll get the nod of Councillor Mifferton. So, yeah, with that condition, with those conditions, sorry.
If I could just come into it, just in terms of the justification for it, I appreciate that the refusal reason that's set out at refusal reason 1 refers to unsustainable sort of connectivity, which Councillor Benny's clearly addressed there. The first part of that refusal reason, though, is about deliverability of the scheme to make it acceptable in highway terms. So obviously that covers the highway safety aspect that we were talking about, that we've had quite a lengthy talk about. I don't consider that we've actually successfully addressed that at this time in terms of whether or not the committee or the proposer is suggesting that there is no highway harm, or whether there is, or whether it's essential that the mitigation is delivered or not. And then obviously in terms of mineral safeguarding, that just needs a bit of attention.
Okay, so before I ask for a seconder, I'll ask Councillor Benny to go a bit, well, he's got a seconder. Councillor Benny, can you just, I know you have got a seconder, that's a slip of the tongue, Freud, but can you just go a little bit stronger on those?
Yeah, I mean, I feel in some ways these parking places, this could have been approved without. I think it's a betterment for the whole community if it has these. I know from dealings we've had with Fenland that there is 67 acres of agricultural land, and all that agricultural land is served by this access for all the heavy machinery that goes down there. And I think that whatever we can put in, the deliverability of this scheme to mitigate the risk, if this scheme cannot be addressed, then it will not be built. But in my opinion, this scheme, it's down to the applicant now to go away and find this. We had this at Mill Lane in March. We had it in the dairy yard at Maney. Same thing about the byway. Both of those were the same, and they were addressed in that application. And I feel that with this one, this scheme does address the safety issues within this scheme.
Okay, Gavin, so you're happy with that. So just to sum up, a couple of minutes ago, we had a proposal to go against officer recommendation to approve this application proposed by Councillor Benny, seconded by Councillor Mifferton. Can I have a show of hands on that proposal, please? 5
votes, Chairman.
Those against?
2 votes, Chairman.
That application has been approved with those conditions, and also having a look at the notice before for Councillor Mifferton, Councillor Benny and myself, just as a note. Thank you very much. So now I'll hand over to Tom Donnelly once again to present application S/YR24 0373, agenda item number 6. So Tom, again, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is a full application for the conversion of an existing agricultural building to form 2 residential dwellings involving the demolition of existing sheds. Again, this is a resubmission of application 210659, which was refused under delegated powers in May 2023. The site is located on the eastern side of Flaggrass Hill Road, which is to the northeast of the main settlement of March. The site itself is adjoined by a commercial site to the north and a residential dwelling to the south. The site plan identifies that the development will make use of the existing access point. The area to the very front of the site there will be retained as parking provision for the existing dwelling. And the parking area in front of the building proposed for conversion is the location of the sheds that are to be demolished. The elevations show a mixture of red-facing brickwork and timber cladding as the palette of materials, with the roof as standing seam-style cladding. The plans identify that only the steel frame of the building and concrete floor slab will be retained from the existing structure. And the floor plans identify that the proposal comprises of 4-bedroom properties with matching layouts, both of which are 2-storey in nature. So the top 2 photographs there show the building as existing, currently comprising of metal cladding, along with the access road to be used to serve the site. The bottom left photo is the access point to the commercial site adjacent to the north, with the bottom right photo showing the residential site immediately to the south. So in summary, the application is for the conversion of the grain store building into 2 residential dwellings. The development is considered to be acceptable in all technical respects. However, the site is located in what is considered to be an unsustainable location, where residential development can only be supported if justified. Policy LP12 Part B of the Fenland Local Plan does allow for residential development in such locations, but it requires that rural buildings are reused and converted. In this instance, the building is considered to be of no architectural or historic merit worthy of retention, and further, with only the steel frame and concrete pad to be retained from the existing building, it's considered that the proposal is tantamount to a rebuild rather than a conversion, therefore failing to comply with Policy LP12, and as such the application is recommended for refusal on this basis. Thank you.
Thank you once again, Tom. We have 1 speaker on this application. I'd now like to invite Shana Jackson, of course she's the agent, to make her presentation in committee. When you're nicely seated, you've got 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak in support of this application. I'm speaking on behalf of the agent, Ian Gowler, as a planning consultant. As you've just heard, this application is for the conversion of an existing agricultural building to form 2 dwellings. The application has been recommended for refusal due to the location of the site being within the countryside and because the building is not considered to be of architectural or historic merit. Firstly, I'd like to highlight to you that the building is not isolated or in a countryside location. There are other dwellings physically adjoining the site which lead up to the continuous built-up frontage of Creek Road. With this in mind, the development would be acceptable in principle in accordance with policy LP3. Secondly, I'd highlight to you that the barn is capable of conversion under permitted development procedure Class Q. However, it was opted not to submit under Class Q so that a higher quality development could be achieved. By taking the route of a full application, we've been able to upgrade the external wall materials to brick and cladding to meet the planning officer's requests. We've been able to include more energy efficient features within the structure, such as upgrades to the fabric of the building, and we've provided a formal garden area. The case law from the Court of Appeal in Mansell versus Tonbridge and Mallingborough Council, development under Class Q is a fallback position, which means that it is a material planning consideration for planning applications that permitted development rights under Class Q can be exercised. In order for a fallback position to be realised, the development must be a real prospect, and it was confirmed within the Mansell case that Class Q permitted development rights do comprise a real prospect, whether there is a prior approval in place or not. The fact, therefore, that the barn can be converted into Class Q should be given substantial weight in the decision-making process. The principle of converting to residential use can accordingly be considered as established. The application is before you with support from March Town Council, and the committee report confirms that it's technically acceptable in terms of highway impacts, residential amenity, biodiversity and flood risk. I trust that you're able to see the planning merits of the case and that it complies with both policy LP3 and the relevant case law. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I'd like to invite members to put questions to Mrs Jackson. If you'd like to ask a question, clarification, please raise your hand. Councillor French.
Thank you, Shannon. I noticed on 19th of May last year it was refused. 2 questions. What's different to that application against this one, and why didn't you go to appeal on that one?
My understanding is they're quite similar. I think it was just a procedural thing. I think we ran out of time in terms of the appeal and just wanted to see how other things move forward in terms of legislation.
Councillor Mifferton, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can you please elaborate on how it complies with policy LP3?
So policy LP3 is a directional policy. So it directs development into locations, sort of built-up settlements. Policy LP3 requires development to be within the settlements or within built-up areas. In my opinion, I'd say it does comply with LP3 because there is development on either side of it, and it's within that cluster existing development around Creek Fen.
Thank you. Is it possible to see an aerial view? I think we had a...
If we've got an aerial view slide, obviously you can.
Just to confirm, yeah, thank you. Thank you, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Mifferton, yeah? Did you want to come back at all, or you finished? Okay, any more questions for Mrs Jackson at all? Councillor French.
Sorry, yeah. Why did you actually go, I know it's not your application, but if you can answer, why do you think he's put in for a conversion of that rather than demolition and the erection of new?
My understanding is that because there's an existing structure in place, the impact on the surrounding area is less. So by converting what's there, so the views from the open countryside will, from the surrounding area, be essentially the same rather than changing what it is. So it'd be more sympathetic to convert rather than do a rebuild.
Okay. Right, anybody got any more questions for Ms Sharla before we go? No? Thank you very much. Members, questions to officers, please. Councillor Senate Clough.
Through you, Chair. Officers, Ashana mentioned the fallback plan. her description of it, does it meet your understanding? And could you elaborate on Shana's description of it in terms of your understanding in relation to this application?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So our understanding is that whilst Class Q is a viable fallback position and a material consideration, it would be necessary to obtain Class Q approval prior to the submission of an application such as this.
Thank you.
Summary, John Chairman, just to say that I think a bit more explanation. I think officers would not have quite an exact same approach as the agent did in relation to the weight that should be given to a material consideration. Case law is clear, it's up to the decision maker to do that, as long as it's reasonable. But as was said, there needs to be a reasonable prospect of a commission being implemented. We've not done any academic exercise to consider whether or not the building is subject or is capable of prior approval. We're not saying it isn't either, because we haven't done that. It's not before us as a decision maker. Nobody's done any exercise about whether or not the prior approval can be implemented. My advice would have been that, if you want to rely on a prior approval, you should submit one and get that as a fallback position that can be given substantial weight, rather than trying to use it as an academic potential exercise in the future, because we just don't know. And as we were saying earlier, planning is about facts. It's not about unknowns. And at the moment, that I would say is an unknown that weight should be given appropriately compared to if there was definitively a fallback position that could be delivered. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you for doing that, clarifying that. Anybody else at all? Questions to officers at all? No?
Just to say, we've never had a Class Q before, so thank you for trying to explain what it is.
Yeah, yes.
Got a lot of knowledge on there. Thank you, Chairman.
There we are. It was a great help, I'm sure. So we've finished with questions for officers. So now I would like would you like to invite members to debate the item in respect to material planning considerations relevant to the application? If you'd like to speak, please raise your hand. We're in debate. Who wants to kick it off? Councillor Friend.
I did ask the question. I can't see any difference to the planning application that was refused last year, so I can't see any difference why we would approve it this time. I don't know.
That's fair enough. That kicks off the debate, right, doesn't it? Councillor Gerstner, thank you.
Notwithstanding the last application, I think we should be consistent, and I agree with Councillor French on this occasion.
I can see where this is heading, I think. Councillor, anybody else? No, I turn this down just for clarification. I turn this down on delegated powers chairman's discretion some months ago, and you're looking and I see no reason at all to change my mind at all, because the application is extremely similar. So that's where I'm at for any guidance anybody wants to have. But anybody else at all wants to enter into the debate? No, so I'm closing the debate now. So I'm looking for a proposer. Who's going to propose? Councillor Gerstner, thank you. Right. Have we got a seconder on this, Councillor Gerstner? Councillor Senate Clough. Thank you. So we've got a proposal to go with officer recommendation to refuse this application, proposed by Councillor Gerstner, seconded by Councillor Senate Clough. Can I have a show of hands on that, please?
That's a unanimous decision, Chair.
Yeah, so that application has been refused. Thank you. So before we go on, does anybody want to stop for 10 minutes, or shall we go for another one? Go for another one is the question. So we will. Okay.
Chairman, just hang fire a minute.
Okay, we'll carry on then. Now hand over to Tom Donnelly again to present application FYR 24-06370, agenda item number 7. So over to you, Tom, when you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is an outline application seeking the erection of up to 3 dwellings with the creation of 3 accesses, 2 of which are to serve the residential properties and a new agricultural access also. The application site is located beyond the southeasterly extremity of development in Eastry, with all existing development situated to the northwest of the site. As can be seen on the aerial photograph, the site is currently undeveloped and forms part of a larger agricultural parcel of land. The indicative site plan identifies that the development will continue the linear pattern of development currently seen on both sides of White Road, with the proposed agricultural access located adjacent to the boundary of Plot 3. We also have an indicative street scene showing that the development would continue the single-storey nature of development that is currently seen along the street scene. So the 2 top photographs there are taken along the frontage of the site, looking in the north and south direction along White Road. As can be seen, the highway is very straight in both directions, which offer good visibility from a highway perspective. And the bottom 2 photographs show views into the site, confirming its undeveloped nature, and the well-established boundary hedge that currently screens the site from the highway. And as you can also see in the bottom left photograph, there is established boundary treatment along the boundary of 127 White Road, which is currently the end of development on that side of the highway. And it also provides a buffer between the residential development and the open countryside. So by way of conclusion, this is an outline application for 3 dwellings and the creation of 3 accesses. The site is located on the edge of Eastry, where only infill development is accepted by policy LP3. The site is beyond the extent of development in Eastry and does not constitute infill development, therefore it is in conflict with policy LP3. Further, the location of the site would result in an encroachment into the countryside, resulting in a significantly detrimental landscape character impact contrary to policies LP12 and LP6. It should be noted, though, that the proposal is considered acceptable in technical regards, but that this does not outweigh the harm caused by the conflict that's already identified, and as such, it's also recommended for refusal. Thank you.
Thank you once again. We have 1 speaker on this application. I'd now like to invite Matthew Hall. He's the agent to make his presentation to the committee. Again, you've got 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. This site is similar to sites directly across the road that have received approvals in the last 4 years, 3 applications, with one of them only 2 meetings ago. The site abuts existing development in Eastry, and in accordance with policy LP12, along this section of White Road, as Thomas said, the form of development is linear, which is what's proposed under this application. The scale of development proposed is bungalows in keeping with the adjacent property that we've seen on the screen, and also bungalows all approved in the last 4 years directly opposite this site. Policy LP16 referred to in the report says retaining natural features, and the features you saw on the side boundary to the bungalow there, they're all being retained, and the majority of the hedge at the front of the site is to be maintained. We've had an ecology report on this site, and when, if approved, when a detailed application comes forward, there will be biodiversity net gain. The site's all in flood zone 1, just like the bungalows on the opposite side of the road, and with this application we've also proposed to increase the link, the actual footpath, adoptable footpath, all the way across the front of this site to link in with the adjacent adoptable footpath, and Cambs County Council haven't raised any concerns in this regard. Could I have the photos and the map that I submitted on the screen, please? Thank you. So, thank you. So we can see here, our site is obviously the north one, the green one, and directly opposite this site, there's 3 applications. The first one to the top left, that was approved 2019 by members against officer recommendation for 2 large bungalows that have been built out. The next one, 2 bungalows were approved 2022 or 2023, directly opposite this site. One of those is being built out when I went down there last week. And at the bottom, the blue area, that was approved for a further 2 bungalows only 2 meetings ago. All of these against officer recommendation. I think I submitted some photos as well, please. Thank you. So I'm stood here in front of our site. And this is what I see on the opposite side of the road. These are the first two large bungalows that were built and completed. Next one, please. And again, I'm stood in front of our site, turning towards the left. You can see there's further bungalows, as I've said, on in front of our site, and that's what's on the opposite side of the road. Thank you. And they've all been approved in the last 4 or 5 years at committee. Whittlesea Town Council support this application. There have been no local objections to this application at all. It's an ideal site for single-storey dwellings, abuts existing development, is opposite recently approved built-out development, all located in flood zone 1. No local objections, no technical objections, and Whittlesea Town Council support the application. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Now I'd like to invite members to put questions to Mr Hall. You know what to do if you've got any. Put your hands up. Councillor Senate-Clough and then Councillor Gerstner.
Hello again, Matthew. I'd like to call your attention to section 3 in the report. Just a couple of questions I have with regard to that section. The footpath, now it's not clear where that's extending to. There is a public right of way in the dip there. Will the footpath extend to that?
So in the back of the officers, in the agenda, in the location plan, in the back of the report, it shows we've extended the red line all the way across the front of that neighbouring bungalow where the actual footpath starts, which that's where my understanding from highways is where the adoptable footpath is now. So we're extending a new adoptable footpath to link up with that, which is in the application.
But not down to the public right of way that goes towards Coates.
We're going back to the village of East Street to the north west. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see it on the map. So you're not linking up with the public. Sorry, could you just turn your mic off while I'm speaking? So you're not linking up with the public right of way, the bottom right of the map.
We're going back into the village of East Street to link up with the footpath. We're not going to extend further down into the countryside with the footpath, no.
Thank you for clarifying that. My second question, in the report, it says that, I mean, you've mentioned bungalows. In the report, it says they're likely to be single storey. Likely concerns me.
I have spoken to the applicant, and if approved, if officers want to put a condition on that these are single storey, that will be absolutely fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, Councillor Gerstner.
Thank you. Following on from Councillor Senate-Clough's footpath. I was a paper boy in East Street. I know this area quite well. Some time ago, Matthew, okay, many years ago. So I'm well versed to, there wasn't any houses down there then, okay. Footpath is very important to the people down there, not only for social walking, but for dog walkers and everybody else. There's no footpath on the other side of the road, okay? They've been hidden away, okay, behind the fence. So would the footpath be delivered at the same time or at the end of the process of building?
My understanding, if the application's approved, officers would word a condition that it has to be delivered prior to occupation of those dwellings. But officers might be better to answer that than me. That's my understanding.
Second question is, the speed limit changes imminently around that area, I think. That could cause an issue or problem. Would you consider trying to get the speed limit changed to 30 prior to the building?
The only thing I would say is, I think it was 2 meetings ago, which was a month ago. Some members weren't here then. It wasn't one of our applications. Of the 2 that have been approved further down from our site, again, highways didn't object to that, or our one, and that I think is definitely in where the speed limit changes. No disrespect, they weren't asked to do that. Highways are happy we can get displays. My initial reaction would be no. But I'm happy to listen. That's all I would say. Other people weren't asked, so that's all I would say, yes. Okay.
Any more questions at all? from Mr. Hall before we let him go? No, thank you very much. So we'll quickly move on. Questions to officers, members. Councillor Senate Clough.
Officers, would it be possible to condition this application that the dwellings were bungalows, single stories?
Okay. You can.
Through you, Chairman, the application's outlining nature. My understanding is there's nothing within the full documentation that says it'll be two-storey. So if, for example, members were considered the only reason this would be acceptable was if that they were single-storey, we can impose a condition on that. There are quite draconian, strong conditions we can impose on outlines if we see necessary to influence the reserve matters. In theory, I'd agree that if members were to, it'd probably be a condition worth imposing. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, good. Anybody else got any more questions for officers at all? No? No? Okay, thank you very much. So, members, and I'd like to invite members to debate the item in respect to material considerations relevant to the application. If you'd like to speak, raise your hand and we're in debate. Who wants to kick it off? And Councillor Gerstner first. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go back to the previous two applications where we have to be seen to be consistent. The approval of FYR 22-1410 on the opposite side of the road approved bungalows almost opposite this particular application. There are two bungalows further down the road. At which point are we going to say that the developments are outside of the East Street village limit? There has to be a point. My problem is consistency. We've approved properties opposite, and I cannot see why this application is different. Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Councillor Gerstner. Did you raise your
I did.
hand? Councillor French, will please carry on. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Slightly in line with what Councillor Gerstner said. Several years ago, when we approved two bungalows against officers' recommendations, we did say, and I can't remember which year it was, we said enough is enough. I wasn't here 2 weeks ago. I wouldn't have supported the extension of that, but we are where we are. But I still think we need to be looking at this, and enough is enough. Otherwise, where is it going to end up?
Councillor Benny, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I thoroughly agree with Councillor French. I wasn't here a few weeks ago. I believe when the application that was YR22 came in, I said this and no more, because I was a little bit reluctant to pass that one. But I will say those two bungalows, that the original two, which is marked up 186 up there, we did go against those on officer's recommendation, and I drive that road quite regularly because my daughter lives in Whittlesea. And every time I come in, I look at those bungalows and think that they are some fantastic bungalows, well designed, and they make the entrance into the village good because of the quality of those builds. When the next one came in, I was a little bit umming and ahhing, but I thought, no, these, and I think I said at the time, no more, but 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was not here, and the others got approved. But these, on this side of the road, square the development up, and I see no problem with this whatsoever. I think that if we say no more as a committee, if the committee agrees that, then maybe that should be no more. But for myself, I would be happy with these, and I think that line should be drawn, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Senate Clough.
I feel that there is a need locally for bungalows. That to support what Councillor Benny said, it does provide a nice entrance point. The bungalows that are there already and are being proposed to be built on the other side of the road are very tastefully designed, and this would create a balance now to those that are proposed, that were given permission last month on the other side of the road, and so I concur with Councillor Benny on those points, and that as this would be the last site before it drops into flood zones 2 and 3, I think, this is flood zone 1 and it's perfectly acceptable. And as I said, it would create a balance. So, as I said, I agree with Councillor Benny.
Yeah, I concur with everything everybody said, strange enough, so I'm not going to take up too much time. I think it will, we have to be consistent, as Councillor Gerson said. They were passed 2 or 3 weeks ago, 3 months or so ago, and also I wasn't here then, so I was quite surprised the others were. But we are where we are, as Councillor French says, so I think they'll really, really nice, and I concur also what Councillor Benny says. I go down there a lot, because it's in my patch at County Council, and I think the bungalows on the other side that have already been built are an absolute credit, and so I will be supporting this. But I will say, I think this is the last time I can really support anything else down White Road at all. So that's for me. Sorry? You can come in.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to caution members that we cannot, as it were, make policy on the hoof, that you're looking at this particular application.
Absolutely.
And any future application, you must keep an open mind for them, put it that way.
Yeah, I think members are aware of that. I think they're just making comments on what we are on this application. I think it's absolutely subject to this application, no more, no less. But thank you for that. We're in debate still. I think we've debated that probably enough. I think everybody's said what they wanted to say. So I'm looking for officers, before I make a proposal, or get somebody to make a proposal. Can't see anything. So I'm looking for a proposal, please. Councillor Gerstner.
I propose that we go against officer recommendations on this application to be consistent with the previous 2 applications. However, I don't know whether we condition anything, that this is the last one that we will do on this part of the road.
We can condition them. We can condition whatever we want, but as I suggested, and our legal Stephen suggested, we can't make that a condition where we can't say, if somebody else wants to put another 2 in, we can't say we won't look at it, because we're only looking at this application before us, and we don't know what's going to come further along the line. So we can't condition that, but we can certainly condition other things that you feel appropriate or other members feel appropriate, just for clarification. Okay, so I'm happy with those. Yeah. Yeah, we want some reasons, Councillor Gerson. Have you got you haven't got your machine on?
The planning committee has to be consistent, and as we've already passed a similar application on the opposite side of the road, the planning committee on this particular occasion seems to want to be consistent with previous applications.
That's fine, Councillor Gerstner. So we've got a proposal with Councillor Gerstner to go against officer recommendations to approve this. Have we got a seconder on that? Councillor Senate Clough. So could we have a show of hands on that proposal, please, with the conditions?
That's a unanimous decision, Chairman.
So with those conditions built in, I think that they are bungalows, and also I think members will agree the path needs to be constructed before first occupation. I think that's where we need to be. You happy with that? Members happy with that? Good. Right, so now we'll break for 10 minutes. Just make sure you're all muted and before we just switch off. Thanks. Thank you, members, for coming back so promptly. I'll now hand over to Gavin Taylor. He's the Principal Development Officer here at Fenland to present application F/YR24 0424F, agenda item number 8. Gavin, when you're ready, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So agenda item 8 is for change of use of land to a dog exercise area and sort of a supporting infrastructure, including fencing, some shelters and the formation of an access with parking. It's located east of Mill Hill Roundabout in March. So just bring attention to members of the update report that was circulated yesterday afternoon, just in terms of further comments received from Environmental Health Services raising no objection, and just advising members that the applicant had submitted a statement which is on our public access site, setting out a number of sort of points that they want consideration of. So just looking at the site, as you can see from the land edge red, it's located directly east of what was known as Mill Hill Roundabout, south of March and north of Wimbledon. It covers around about 3.9 hectares of agricultural land. The site itself is crosses flood zones 1, 2 and 3 with zones 2 and 3 over to the eastern side of the site. The actual point of access and the area immediately into the site is flood zone 1. As you can see there, you've got open countryside extending east and northwards from the site, and obviously a built form of Wimbledon ending there to the southwest. So this is the proposed site plan for the dog exercise yard. As you can see, access is taken directly from Wimbledon Road, just shortly after the roundabout, where it accesses then onto an area of hard standing and car park. Each I suppose the site is divided up into bays, so to be, or sections. You can see there in sort of linear arrangement, and each of those is served by a shelter for obviously users to use and access as they need to. As you can see to the east, which wraps around on the southern boundary there, is the IDB easement. There's a close-up view of the access, which shows obviously entrance and exit with the left turn takes you down to the roundabout to exit the site. As you can see, you've got footways with drop curbs there, tactile paving, and then the picture to the right sort of shows the car park arrangement and how they're sort of laid out in bays with a gravelled surface. Cross sections and elevational views of the shelters that are proposed, and this is and then the fencing and sort of gate that's proposed to divide up the runs and obviously create the general boundary to the site there, sort of mesh fencing. So as you can see some photos there. So photo 1 sort of looking into the site at the point of access. As you can see, this sort of the field there being agricultural, and obviously various photos running through sort of pan around the sort of to show the extent of the site relative to the open countryside. Photo 4 at the bottom there shows sort of near the point of access. You can see a street light there in the foreground, and then obviously the footway, which essentially connects Wimbledon right through up to March. And then obviously the photos at the bottom there pan around. You can see the petrol station on photo 6, and that continued footpath with street lighting. So this application is a full application seeking approval for the dog exercise yard and the aforementioned infrastructure. It's considered acceptable on balance in terms of technical matters. We've got no objections in terms of highways. Don't consider residential amenity harm would prevail with this scheme. No issues in terms of flooding, because a sequential approach has been taken to the design of the site, essentially avoiding high flood risk with those shelters and car parking area. And there are no evident issues with ecology and biodiversity. However, this site is outside the settlement in an area of open countryside. And it's given that sort of the scale of the site, the overall expanse of it, would result in an urbanising effect on that open countryside to the detriment of the character of the area, contrary to development plan policies and obviously the SPD that's quoted there, protecting high quality environments. It's considered that the benefits of the scheme don't outweigh this policy conflict, so the recommendation is for refusal. Thank you.
Thank you, Gavin. We have one speaker on this application, and I'd like to invite Sean Saxby. He's the applicant to make his presentation to the committee. You've got 5 minutes there. Thank you.
Afternoon all. We respectfully submit the following counter-arguments in support of the proposed dog park, which we believe aligns with the community needs and meets multiple planning policy objectives. Point 1, community need and popularity. The demand for dog parks in our region is substantial, given that approximately 33% of households own dogs. Existing parks are frequently oversubscribed, reflecting a clear need for additional well-managed facilities. This project aims to provide a safe, clean and professionally operated space for pet owners, offering a secure environment for dogs and people who like to enjoy the outdoors. This meets a crucial need, especially given the 22% increase in reported dog-related incidents this year, highlighting the need for controlled spaces for exercise and socialisation. Additionally, the site is accessible. It can be reached by footpath from both March and Bloomington, making it ideal for those who wish to walk to the park. Furthermore, a bus stop adjacent to the site provides easy access for those using public transport, ensuring that the park can be enjoyed by a wider segment of the population, including individuals without cars. This supports sustainability goals by reducing reliance on car travel and promoting healthier, more active lifestyles for residents who walk or take the bus to the facility. Point 2, biodiversity and landscape enhancement. While the current site is a simple agricultural field, the proposed dog park design incorporates extensive hedging and landscaping, which will significantly enhance the biodiversity and create a thriving habitat for local wildlife. This approach aligns with the policy LP 16.B as it directly supports and enriches the biodiversity. The proposed landscaping will also create natural buffers, creating screening, fencing, and other park features to maintain the rural character of the area. Point 3, minimal visual impact. The visual impact of the proposed park will be minimal and thoughtfully mitigated. The design features fencing and structures that will be effectively screened by newly planted hedgerows mirroring traditional field boundaries common throughout Fenland countryside. The site's natural topography, coupled with existing mature trees on the southern boundary, further limits visibility from public viewpoints, particularly from the south and the west. This ensures the project aligns with LP 16C and D, preserving the landscape's character and avoiding adverse impact on the rural scene. Point 4, the precedence of existing developments. Notably, there are several other leisure and commercial developments nearby, such as the driving range and golf course directly opposite the proposed site and a petrol filling station to the west. These facilities already introduce built features and floodlighting into the area, which are visually more prominent than the dog park's proposed facilities. Additionally, recent permission for an office building to the north of the road has set a precedent for further development in the area, demonstrating that controlled non-residential use is compatible with the local setting. Point 5, future demands and the nearby development. With the anticipated Southeast March development pipeline, there will be substantial increase in the local population, including households with dogs. It's essential to proactively address the recreational needs of these residents, including dedicated spaces for pet exercise and socialisation. Should even a third of these new households include dogs, the demand for secure, accessible outdoor space will only intensify, underscoring the need for this dog park in particular. Point 6, alignment with policy LP16. We believe that although LP16 primarily addresses residential and commercial development, the dog park aligns well with the policy's broader objectives. Point B, protects and enhances the biodiversity on the site with significant landscaping hedging. C, incorporates and respects natural features, creating a landscape in harmony with traditional countryside field patterns. D, enhances local character, provides additional leisure opportunity in keeping with nearby amenities and does not disrupt existing landscape. F, incorporates facilities for waste collection and disposal, ensuring a well-maintained, user-friendly environment. J, ensures a safe environment through secure fencing and design providing a controlled space that deters crime and promotes community safety. Point 7, there's been significant local support for the project and minimal objection, emphasising community endorsement of the facility that will encourage exercise and social interaction and mental well-being for both pet owners and their dogs. This aligns with Fenland's local plan and broader goal for community-orientated development.
Yeah, thank you for that. So, members, thank you, Mr. Saxby. Thank you, members. Questions, clarifications. I'll take Councillor French first, then obviously Councillor Marks.
Thank you. Afternoon, Mr. Saxby. Aren't you concerned? I've got several questions for you. Aren't you concerned of the loss of prime farmland? I know your company does own several parcels of land. Didn't you think you could have found somewhere that wasn't as prominent as the A141? That's the first question, if you want to answer that, or each one. Are you proposing to put toilet facilities there?
We're not proposing toilet facilities at this point. Other dog parks in the area don't have the same facilities, so we're proposing to match those. In regards to farmland and loss of farmland, there is still plenty of farmland that Fenland has to offer, and sort of in alignment with existing developments and proposals, i.e. March South East. There's 2,000 homes essentially going there, which is currently farmland.
Thank you. Yes, I do know about that. The access, it's disappointing to hear that highways have not objected. That's a 60-mile-an-hour stretch of road. You propose to do a no right-hand turn. I can't see how that you can make that work. There's a no right-hand turn at Hostmore, and the people that turn right there, and that's in a 40-mile limit. So I would be very concerned on highways, even although highways. You mentioned about people getting a bus. Do people take their dogs on buses now? Okay, dogs can, yeah, okay.
I think with the oversubscription of many of the dog parks in sort of around the area, sort of Thorney and Wisbech, etc., they're constantly full. So if you need to take your dog out to a dog park and you don't drive, it's lucky that there's a bus stop right there.
If you can get a bus.
That's not my problem.
That is a leading question, Councillor French, if you can get a bus. But Councillor Marks.
Thank you, Mr. Saxby. Just clarify, there looks to be 28 car parking spaces that you're giving. So you rent by the hour? That sounds awful, but you rent by the hour?
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah.
So if you work that out, say, so the changing over that's 168 car movements, or 168 cars that could be using that in a day. I agree with Councillor French. I'm really worried about the access. It's been a farmer's field. It's probably had one tractor a day. Coming out onto that roundabout, so close to the actual roundabout itself. I know highways, but we've sat here before numerous times regarding highways and their desktop surveys. I have a real concern that you're trying to put more vehicles through there. Bearing in mind, at the last planning meeting, we passed another 400 homes along there, and that was another thing that was brought up at the time. Do you not think it's too many?
So the way the facility has been designed within the design and access statement is they'll be split into hourly blocks, but broken up in half-hour sections. So the demand at each hour or half-hour point is less than if it was just on the hour. So, sorry, that probably didn't make sense to you.
Sorry.
So
you've still got the same volume of cars. You're
breaking it up, though. Yeah.
Yeah, but you've still got the same volume of cars and 168 movements off that road per day. I mean, you've got the garage across the road where people come off the slip road and drive straight in, but you have the potential there. And best will in the world with Cambs County Council, the keep clear signs that they usually put on the road have gone within half a day. White lining, and I've got a real severe sort of like feeling that is going to back up to the roundabout very, very quickly, and there will be a bottleneck there with the amount of vehicles you are proposing.
So many of the parking spaces there are additional waiting spaces, so they're not necessarily for use throughout the whole hour. So when someone turns up, they'll be held in the waiting space, so they're not waiting on the road. There's essentially off-road a waiting area.
Sorry, that's irrelevant. They are still going to be turning into that field one way or another and leaving that field one way or another. So whether it's a waiting place or whether it's a parking space, I think that's a bit of a blind you're trying to sell us here. It's going to be the same amount of vehicle movements, but what you're saying is, oh, it's a waiting place.
Agreed. Cars are going to have to come in and out. From a highways perspective, we've spoken directly with highways, had transport studies measuring the speeds along there. Obviously, as you're approaching the roundabout, you're not doing 60 miles an hour. If you are, then you're not driving very safely. So yeah, we've gone through all the hurdles that we've had to with highways to alleviate those concerns.
Okay, then going on to Councillor French's other question regarding farmland. Say this doesn't actually work going forward. What then would you do? Would you return this to farmland or then look to develop it for other measures, as you've already got outline planning for, should you be granted it, for something now with an access?
To be honest, we haven't looked past it not working. As I've outlined, there's a great demand for a dog park. It's something that I feel the community needs. So, yeah, we haven't looked past that, essentially.
Thank you.
Just some clarity before I bring Councillor Senate Clough in. There's 550 houses coming off there. The 400 we passed a couple of months ago, then 130 we passed a couple of weeks ago. So that's 460 houses, 560 houses. So yeah, that's quite a lot coming off that. And a lot of them are coming off Lambshill Drove. So with that, Councillor Senate Clough.
Through you, Chair. Hello, I'm a stickler for accuracy, and we're talking about car numbers that are essentially abstract. So I wondered if you've got any comparative data for the places that you mentioned in Thorney, for example, and Wisbech, so we can get an actual proper idea of the numbers of people coming in and out.
Okay, so in terms of subscription to those facilities, generally our modelling of how booked they are in advance is typically they're around 30 to 40% on the available hours. They are booked sort of 30 to 40% of the time.
Through you, Chair. 30 to 40% of what number?
Some have different booking hours, but they're typically from 8 till 6 or longer.
30 to 40% of what overall percentage, though? Of what number? The number. When you've got, I'm sure you've got comparative analysis and data to share based on other business models around the area of dog parks. How many per day, how many visitors per day are those other places getting? So it's 30 to 40% of that I'm trying to ascertain.
Oh, of course. Typically they're getting between weekends or more. Weekends are fully booked, so there'll be, if there's one field there would be probably 10, 11 trips or visits. We obviously have 4 fields. I don't expect them to be 100% of the weekend still. During the week, numbers are much less. Typically everyone's at work during the day, so there's less opportunity. So typically they're around 6 hours or 6 trips.
Through you, Chair. For clarity, you said that the weekend's 11 trips per day and 6 during the week?
On average, I would say yes.
Okay, Councillor Marks.
Sorry, for clarity. So you're putting 28 car parking spaces in for 11 cars per day on a weekend. Is that what you're saying? Or 11 cars per hour?
So most dog parks are for one field. We have the area here to split it into 4. I think the demand is there for 4. So in terms of cars, there would be 4 times the amount. So 44 on the day.
44 on a day, yes, or on an hour?
A day. We have additional car parking spaces in case people bring 2 cars. If there are people that want to bring sort of a friend essentially with them. Yes, there are going to be more cars than a single dog park with 11 cars per day.
So working on 8 hours a day, okay, which is not summertime, but obviously winter time. Yeah. So if working on 8 hours, but you let it by the hour, half an hour.
Like by the hour, but it's split into 2 fields will be let from on the hour and 2 fields will be let on the half hour to reduce the peak of traffic coming out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I don't know if anybody's any the wiser, but perhaps some clarification later on. Councillor Gerstner.
Thank you. Are we saying that each field is going to have 1 dog on at one time?
No. Some people, most of the time that is the case. Or there'll be one person booking it. They may have 2 dogs though.
Second question. Dogs need to go to the toilet. There are in excess of 8 million dogs in the UK. I like dogs, but they make a lot of dog dirt. Have you got any plans on how to dispose of the dog dirt?
Yes, as per the plans on there, it's a bit small on there, but there are lots of dog bins around and we'll have a contractor come in to empty them. We haven't worked out the exact frequency yet, but enough to keep them empty.
Okay, anybody else got any more questions for Mr. Sachs before we let him go? No, thank you very much. Right, members, questions, clarifications to officers? Councillor Marks. Ready.
To be fair, it was a question I did ask earlier in Chairman's briefing, but I will ask it again. From memory, I believed we were doing a modification, or the application that was in front of us for the 400 homes, there was a change to this roundabout for an extra lane to come off that roundabout, turning left towards Chatteris. And can you categorically say that that is not the case?
Yes, that's not the case categorically. I checked it after our meeting this morning. So we had a look at the plans for the Mill Hill Road improvement works, and the improvement works basically incorporate a widening of the approach arm. So heading from Chatteris to Mill Hill Roundabout, it's the widening of the approach arm in order to widen those 2 approach lanes, certainly the right turn lane to give that capacity, so we don't get lane starvation of people queuing up as they approach March. In terms of the northern side of the 141 Mill Hill Roundabout, the Mill Hill Roundabout improvement works didn't include any widening or adjustments in that regard, notwithstanding the application site sits outside of any highway land. So should there be a future need to widen any of the carriageways that you may be concerned about, there appears to be highway land in order to accommodate that at this time, without prejudice to any final assessment of highways, but certainly this scheme doesn't appear to encroach onto highway land.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to bring Councillor French in here. She's something to do with the mats, and she's been working on this St Peter's Road and this one, I think. So can you clarify this, Councillor French?
Well, I can't, but I have a MATS meeting next week and I certainly will be asking the questions, but this does concern me. At the planning application a few weeks ago for the Lansdrove, and I can't remember Hudson's or whatever the applicant was. It was
Wilson Home.
Yeah. They were requested something like, and I can't remember off the top of my head, whether it was 300,000 or 425,000, and there was chunks of money, and that was going to be looked through MATS. Now that was for the improvements at Mill Hill, so I would think at this time, as Gavin has said, that he checked that it might not have fed back the information, and I'm really concerned at Mill Hill. I mean, you only have to go there, school runs and things like that. The traffic is horrendous. You know, that really is, and it's so, the access is so close to the roundabout, it's unbelievable.
So, Gavin, you'd like to come in there, I'm sure.
Yeah, if I could just further clarify, so that just to clarify the Barrett scheme and the other Barker's Lane scheme that members have recently considered. So the MATS scheme is for upgrade improvements at Pease Hill Roundabout, Hostmore, I think St Peter's Road as well. The Mill Hill Roundabout mitigation is proposed to be a direct delivery by the developer, because there isn't actually a project on hand with Local Highways Authority to deliver that. So it's not a financial contribution to that. the developers would be expected to directly deliver those improvements to Mill Hill Roundabout that were set out in those reports.
Well, thanks, Gavin, but
Go on, Councillor French.
Turn your
No,
light-
I'm asking you to carry on.
Turn your light off then. I'm not convinced. I mean, I've been working on the map since 2017 and had a different scheme to come in, and we never expected the amount. We know it's allocated 4,200 homes in the 2014 plan, but the applications that are coming in now, the traffic in March, I mean, you only have to see what happened when we were doing Broad Street. It's absolutely chaos. The bypass, chaos. Everywhere you go is chaos. Thankfully, Broad Street is now finished, so we're not going to, but we are going to start, and I'll find out next week whether it is going to be St Peter's Road or Pease Hill, and that is major changes up there. And my understanding, we will be looking at Mill Hill, and then if you think we haven't seen the application, but there's going to be a roundabout on the 141 as well, further back. So I think this application, yes, I believe there is a need for this. I think that's the wrong place. Sorry.
Still questions to officers. That's perhaps one for the debate, Councillor French. Anything, questions for officers at all? No? Thank you. Right, now we can open up for debate. Now, Councillor French. So you can have your little say now, no doubt. Thank you.
Yeah, I think there is a need for this because, yes, there is hundreds of dogs. I understand there is already one in March. I don't know if it's still going. There's one in Maney. I just think this one is premature.
Councillor Marks.
I would agree with Councillor French. I am concerned. I know we sit here time in, time out. We have Cams Highway saying one thing, but we actually all live around this and we actually use these roundabouts and we use these roads. And equally, they sit with a desktop survey, which always concerns me. I think the access is too close to that roundabout. I can see yet another bottleneck happening there. Yes, I do believe there's a need. I think, there is certainly a need. The one in Maney does really, really well. However, I just think this is in the wrong place. I don't think it should be so prominent onto a roundabout like that. So I actually believe officers on this occasion have got it right to refuse.
Councillor Benny.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't disagree with the fact that we probably need somewhere to walk dogs, but this area in the emerging local plan is for industrial use. And if you look at the flood maps, the part up by the road is flood zone 1. And that could be used for car showrooms, it could be used for McDonald's, and I think to put it into, I like my milkshake, and I think to turn this into a dog walking area is a waste of a prime site that could be so much better used. Truthfully, if you're going to put car parking spaces, you could, because people drive with their dogs. I know I did when I had a dog. You drive somewhere with your dog. That could be on a piece of flood zone or piece of flood zone 3, because if it's wet, people won't go on it, and if not, then it can be used. I think there's plenty of other places you could put a dog walking site on land that has less potential than this. This is a prime piece of real estate, and really it should be put to better use. That's not what we're looking at today, but looking at the flood map, it is flood zone 2 and 3, and the part at the front is flood zone 1, and the potential for that is far greater than somewhere to walk your dog.
Yeah, so I agree with everything everybody said here, and I can possibly see where this is going. We do need this, but it is in the wrong place. If it was down some drove somewhere, yeah, it probably, I'd be probably thinking differently. But with this application so close to the Mill Hill roundabout, I can't support this. I think officers have got this absolutely right. But again, I'll listen to what anybody else says again. Anybody? Oh, Councillor Senate Clough.
My reservations are purely based on the fact that we really did not get the clarity that I think we needed on the numbers coming in and out. So that's where my reservations are coming from.
Okay. Anybody else at all? We're still in debate. Councillor French.
Yeah, I would just refer to the update that we did get from our environmental recommended refusal. The above update does not alter the original recommendation set out in section 11 of the report. And I think, you know, we need to listen to our environmental people.
Absolutely right. Okay. Anybody else want to add to the debate? I'm going to close. No, Councillor Mifton, last minute. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just a very quick one. I know highways did not object, but my concern is about the impact it will have where the access is located. Is going to create a problem, a bottleneck at that roundabout. That is my main concern. And also, it's quite in an urban area. Something else can be done with that land. Something more productive, I think. Thank you.
Yep. But just to reiterate, we just have to look what's in front of us. I think we all agree. Maybe it's been suggested something else can be done, but we are looking at a dog walking exercise yard. So anybody else got anything else to say? I'm closing the debate now. I'm bringing officers in. Have you got anything to add to it, officers? No. So I'm looking for a proposal or a proposer. Councillor Marks.
To go with officer's recommendation to refuse this application.
So I've got a proposal to go with officer recommendation to refuse this application, proposed by Councillor Marks, seconded by Councillor Mifferden. Can I have a show of hands on that proposal, please? Lastly, I'll now hand it over to Gavin again to present application F/YR24 06260, agenda item number 9. Gavin, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So agenda item number 9, last one on our agenda today, is an outline proposal for up to two dwellings, matters of access and scale committed at Hawthorne Drive, Whittlesea. No updates to report on this application. So just taking a look at the site. So the site is within the settlement of Whittlesea. It comprises a sort of former garage site. So you can see the sort of backland nature of it, surrounded by dwellings, residential dwellings. There are 2 points of access serving 2 separate dwellings. As you can see, one from Hawthorne Drive and then one from Sycamore Road, which is the one to the north there. So this is the indicative site plan. As I said, the application is an outline with only access and scale committed. The proposal is for single-storey properties. And you can see the points of access there from Sycamore Road and Hawthorne Drive, which leads to individual garages serving each of the properties, a fairly modest size footprint of a bungalow with rear garden space to serve each dwelling. These are sort of indicative elevations, so by no way means committed other than scale, but as you can see, it's fairly sort of traditional and modest in form. Again, the other one to sort of show how it may appear. And these are the sort of garage elevations that are sort of shown, double garages serving each of the properties. So just quickly running through the site photographs, you can see there, the top left photograph is the access drive from Hawthorne Drive between numbers 35 and 37. So that leads round to the sort of rear. And you can see the top right photograph is the Sycamore Road access. There's currently palisade fencing and gates across both access points, as you can see from the other photographs. And these are sort of other photographs just sort of showing it in site context. So Sycamore Road access and the sort of rough feel of sort of the width of that and distance to the nearest properties. There's a grassed area toward 2 Debdale Court. That's proposed to be sort of location for one of the properties. And the bottom photographs sort of show that sort of former garage site and its sort of boundaries relative to adjacent properties. So it's an outline application for up to 2 dwellings. It's former garage land within the settlement of Whittlesea. It's considered to be a brownfield site within an established residential area, therefore given weight in that regard in terms of the presumption. Access and scale are considered to be acceptable in this instance, given that they're only serving single properties, and the scale is unlikely to result in any visual dominance or amenity harm subject to final design. There are no matters really brought forward in terms of technical issues to resolve, and therefore it's considered having regard to the development plan taken as a whole, and that includes the Whittlesea neighbourhood plan as well as the Fenland local plan, that the application is compliant with those policies.
Recommendation is therefore to grant. Thank you. Thank you once again, Gavin. We have one speaker on this application, and I'd like to invite Rob Parsons, he's the applicant, to make his presentation to the committee. You've got 5 minutes. Thank you.
Hello, thank you. Yeah, my name's Rob Parsons. I represent Parco Developments. We're the owners of the land, and we are the applicants. We're a small construction company, and this does represent a considerable investment for us. We are aware of a number of objections to the scheme. Most of the objections are around access and overlooking, and the reason that we're here and it's not been granted is because of those objections. So I just wanted to address those if I could. With regards to access, there are a number of properties with their rear gardens back onto the land. Some of these have given themselves access into the land. It has also been previously used as a cut through. Before we purchased the land, we did check through our solicitor who had access rights and what those access rights were. The checks revealed that none of the properties that back onto or are adjacent have any access rights other than for maintenance and repair, which is usual. And it's not a public right of way. It's not a byway either, thankfully. The fact that it's always been open and people have walked through and given themselves access, one of the main objections is they've lost their access, but they never actually had any access in the first place. The fact that we've now fenced it off, we haven't removed their access, it's just that they didn't have any in the first place. We were worried about people fly tipping, and as the owners of the land, we are now responsible for anybody that walks through. So if they fall over and hurt themselves, it is our responsibility. So we thought to address both the fly tipping and our responsibility to the land, we did fence it off so that people couldn't walk through. With regards to the loss of light and overlooking, we did take advice from the planner and we reduced the schemes down to single storey, even though there are 2-storey properties next to it. And we reduced the scheme from 4 units down to 2, even though the 4 units did meet planning guidance. So we've gone down to 2 and we're single storey. We do believe we've followed planner's advice. We do believe we've tried to be as considerate as possible to the neighbours. And we're hoping that the planning committee will still approve the scheme. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Members, questions, clarifications to Mr. Parsons, please. Councillor Sennett Clough and then Councillor Gerstner. Thank you.
Through you, Chair. Hello. I understand that people have been, as you've described, using this piece of land for whatever reason. I'm familiar with the area, and there are a lot of children that play out there, and they have probably been using that site as a playground. Whether that's right or wrong, it's hard to re-educate children, especially young children. So I wondered what you would do if you were given planning permission to kind of re-educate the children in terms of the dangers during the construction phase, because there'll be big machinery. Some children might see it as a more exciting playground. So what measures would you take to ensure children's safety during that phase?
Well, as a developer, we do have certain things that we have to do anyway to protect children and the public. We have to make the site secure so that they can't get any access. We have to be secure during construction as well as when we're not on site. So that we would just comply with the relevant guidelines for keeping children and public out of construction sites, and that'll be with signage and with fencing, just to try and keep everybody safe, really. But there is also, if I could just add, within about 100 yards, there is a small pocket park that children can play on anyway. and I believe there's a small primary school being built just around the corner. So it's, you know, it's probably quite dangerous for children to play in there anyway, because there are lots of changes in level and it is all just a concrete surface.
Thank you, but from a child's perspective, your site is probably going to be much more attractive than the boring old playground down the road. So would you consider a leaflet drop locally just to make the parents aware? Is that something that you would consider?
As a matter of course, wherever we're building in a built-up area as a business, we do contact all of the neighbours anyway, and we give them our contact details so that they have a direct contact with us at all times anyway. And yeah, absolutely. If it's going to keep children safe and it's going to advise people of what to do, then a leaflet drop is, yeah, no problem at all.
Thank you. I appreciate that you will obviously make the site very secure, and it'll be very difficult to access anyway. But I just think, you know, a belt and braces measure in these circumstances, because it has been an unused site for so long. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Gerstner, thank you.
Thank you. Concrete. How do you propose to dispose of that? Firstly, secondly, surface water and drainage strategy. There's a lot of building there around that area that was well developed in the 1950s, 60s and 70s. The area is not prone to flooding, but it does get pretty watery when we have heavy rains. Have you got strategy? It says here that there's no surface water drainage strategy within your plan. So dispose of the concrete, how are you going to do that? And secondly, the drainage strategy, please.
Cheers, thank you. Disposing of the concrete, it would be how concrete is ordinarily disposed of. We would have a licensed carrier taking it to either being crushed and reused, if we could crush it and reuse it on site, but I believe we'd probably end up with too much, to be fair, because there'd be just too much. The amount of concrete that's on site, the whole area was just covered in concrete, as they were garages and car parking previously. So we would probably crush and reuse on site, because that would make sense for us commercially, but there would have to be some that would have to leave site. As far as the drainage scheme is concerned, there was a drainage scheme supplied, albeit I'm not sure whether it satisfied everything that you guys were looking for. There is surface and foul drainage within the site already that we could possibly connect up to, but I'm not sure whether we've not done any surveys yet to see if a soakaway would be possible or not. I'm not sure if soakaways are used in this area at all, but if we could do one, then we would do one.
So do you have permission from the Anglian Water for disposal of foul water and surface water?
We did request Anglian Water, we put the scheme to them, and they said that they wouldn't look at a scheme until we'd got outline permission.
Hey, have you finished, Councillor Gerstner? Yeah, Councillor French then.
Two questions. What was the site used for before?
I believe it was just, it was owned by the council, and it was garages. The garages have since been demolished and taken away, so it's now just a concrete area.
So that there's no main sewage at this time on the site?
Yes, there is. There's two manholes on site. There is a foul and there is a storm drain.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'll come in now, I think. Yeah, it's really refreshing to learn that you've been in consultation with officers and taking their advice on single dwellings. I think that's to be applauded. The second thing is health and safety that Councillor Clough was saying. Obviously, you'll go by health and safety guidelines. It could be probably a good thing to put down one of your numbers, your mobile work numbers, on the site notice to say if there is a problem, they can get through to you. And then I'm sure that goes on larger sites and it wouldn't go amiss on yours either. And also regards to Councillor Gerson saying what you're going to do with the concrete. It'll obviously, you've said that it'll go on a waste carrier with a proper waste carrier's licence, and what you don't use will go to a waste site. So I'm pleased to see that you've got that in order. So thank you very much for that. Really refreshing. Thank you. You can indeed.
Just to let the committee know, before I set up on this venture and with this company, I did work for much larger contractors, and I was one of the original on the original committee for the Considerate Construction scheme, which is now rolled out across the UK. So working with neighbours and local businesses is very close to me anyway. So I would look to make sure that this scheme followed those values, even if it wasn't eligible because it was too small.
That's very good news. Any more questions at all, Mr. Parsons? No, thank you very much. Members, questions to officers? And Councillor French has one, thank you.
Thank you. I mean, this application is only outline. I'm assuming when the reserved matters come in, if it is approved, that a consultation will be sent to the residents anyway through the council, which is the normal consultation. So I understand what Councillor Clough said. I don't think it's up to the applicant to do this when it's a function of the council. And with regard to the kids using it, well, I think, signs have to go up there, and but it is an outline planning application, and we'll see more in reserved matters.
We'll move into the debate. And anything else to say? Anybody in the debate? Anybody got any? Want to kick the debate off? No. Councillor Miffordin, then I'll come in. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I personally, I don't see any problems with this application. It's an outline application. It's in a built-up area, and if anything, from what the photo shows, the site is largely concreted right now. So by the time it's developed and built, and I'm sure there'll be green areas for rainwater attenuation. So I don't see a problem with this personally. Thank you.
Yeah, for me, I just think it's a brownfield site. It's had garages on there before, and we are, as we all know in this committee, we're all encouraged to use brownfield sites at all possible. So I will be supporting this application. But we're still in debate if anybody wants to. No? No? Right. Oh, you do then, Councillor French.
Well, I think we've had enough of discussions, questions and debate, and I think move on and move the officer's recommendations.
I'm just going to bring it up before we do that. Have you got anything to add to it? Protocol, Councillor French. Now then, you can make your proposal if you like.
Move the officer's recommendation.
So we've got a proposal to move the officer recommendation by Councillor French. Have we got a seconder? Councillor Miffordin. So all those in favour of that, please.
Unanimous decision, Chair.
Okay, so the application has been approved. So thank you for attending today's committee meeting. This concludes today's business, and I declare the meeting closed at 3:45, roughly. Thank you very much.